This video is made possible by our loyal Patreon supporters. Visit patreon.com/psychetruth.
Hey guys, Tessa here. Welcome. I'm going to be doing a glute and low back massage, and I'm going to head right in with some compressions. I'm actually going to ask Tyler to bring his arms over the top of the table, and what this does is it creates a little more space in the QL muscle, and whenever I'm doing low back work, I like to have that arm position. So I'm going to go ahead and just to make it a little easier on myself to start, I'm going to go in with both of my soft fists. And FYI, you always want to get consent from your client when you're working on the glutes. Just make sure that you talked about it before and communicate how healthy it is for the low back to do glute work. Sometimes pain in the low back is just referral pain from often from the internal and external rotator. The piriformis is a big culprit for low back pain, as well as these big muscles in here. This Maximus muscle can get really tight, especially on someone who is really active like Tyler. So right now I'm not doing anything fancy. I'm just warming up these muscles. And the piriformis is definitely harder to access and it's a little trickier to work on. So just focusing on this big muscle, the Maximus and the medius a little bit. And really just warming everything up. And if you want to start kind of getting a little more detailed, you can go in with one fist at a time, and I find that it really helps if I'm a little further away from the table, and then I can really put my full weight into what I'm doing. And trying to do deeper work in the glutes with the thumb is I feel like it's kind of impossible. It's not, but I just don't like doing that when I don't have to. So I'm just kind of starting to work my way in a little bit deeper. And this isn't necessary at all to hold the wrist, but I just feel a little more stable. And it's just a little extra support for my wrist as I'm working. And just remembering to stay tuned with my own breath as I'm starting to get a little deeper. So it's really healthy to do some compressions along this IT band as well. So I'm just going to go in with the same kind of pressure here. And if you feel, some people have kind of bonier hips, you obviously want to work in a way that feels appropriate to the body you're working on. And maybe just spending a little bit longer. So if you're feeling like your shoulders starting to pop up by your ear, you might need to step further away from the table as you work. And I'm going to go ahead and work my way around this iliac crest a little bit. So I'm just going to it's more just kind of scanning to see any imbalances that I might find. And I'm going to go in with my elbow at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and just make sure my spine's nice and long as I'm working. And I'm going to just start to do some trigger point in here. And this usually feels really good when you're working on someone that's fairly athletic. The this glute max usually works pretty hard. So I'm starting to access the piriformis a little bit. So I dig in a little deeper. And it can help if you want to get better access to the piriformis. It can help to do some active release, which I'll do a little bit later. But I'm really not holding back here. So this does require a good bit of energy, but this is about 100 times easier than trying to do the same thing with my fingers, my thumb. And I'm going to work my way into the medius a little bit. And this is such an important place to work when you're focusing on helping the low back out. So depending on how things are responding, I'll usually go through that run up the glute muscles 1 or 2 times, and I'm going to go ahead and do that one more time. And don't expect, your experience to be the same. Some things may have shifted as you start to introduce the deeper pressure. I'm just really listening to what's going on and gradually sinking my weight into these muscles, not just jabbing my elbow in, finding a way to work where Tyler knows what's coming, but it's not too much in the beginning. I really love doing glute work. It's just super healing for the entire spine. And most people don't realize how much tension they carry in their glutes until they get them worked on. And if your client's struggling a little bit, you can use some distraction techniques, just like a simple rocking motion. I'll often do this when I'm working on the medius and I'm not primarily focused on the glutes. And I'm going to go ahead and start with some active release in here. So first I like to just make sure that the leg's not holding any tension. And I'm going to start internally and externally rotating this leg. And so just starting to allow this active release to position these muscles in a way that's easier to access. This isn't necessary. What I was just doing with my elbows, a really nice way to work as well. You can also use your elbow if you want to do something a little bit deeper. And this is not for the faint of heart. This is only for people that are ready for deeper work. And I would never begin with this. I always work towards it. This is probably the best way to work on the piriformis if your client suffers from sciatic pain. This is like a money move. It's going to help tremendously if your client can tolerate deep tissue. And yeah, this isn't Gonna do a whole lot for the medius. So I'll kind of stay lower in the Maximus and just kind of making sure that worked some of the kinks out before I move on. And a nice way to kind of, and that this is a great place to just do a little quad stretch. So Tyler's pretty flexible. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and elevate his leg a little bit. I'm just gonna bring my knee underneath, and that's a much deeper stretch. Is that okay? And it's really important to check in with your client or your friend, because some people are kind of embarrassed about not being more flexible, or communication is just really important when you're working. I always hold this about 30 seconds, really take my time. I'm not forcing Tyler's heel down, I'm really just encouraging it down. Nice firm hold. And we are ready for that glute work on the opposite side. I'll go head on over here. And making sure that we have that same arm position. So I'm gonna go ahead and just, nothing fancy, I'm just gonna start kind of warming up just like I did on the opposite side. And for a couple of reasons, this was a really nice way to warm up. So it doesn't require as much, like you're hitting all the necessary muscles without having to think about it too much. So when you're using less surface area, like your elbow, just requires more concentration. And it also just feels nice. It's just a great way to kind of begin a glute session. And I'm also scanning this Maximus muscle, just kind of seeing where I'm going to need to do deeper work. And I'm going to go ahead, and if you find that your hand's tired, if you used one hand on the opposite side, you can certainly explore using your opposite soft fist. So that's what I'm going to do. And don't be afraid to like explore different angles, less traditional angles of standing by the table. Like really, it's okay to get a little creative if it feels good to your body and if it feels like you're in sync with your client. So I'm starting to introduce a little bit more pressure. And if parts of this muscle feel kind of bouncy and super fibrous, I would just kind of be pretty patient. And with that kind of like fascial restriction, like active release is really powerful work. So I'm going to spend a little extra time in there with that active release later. So, yeah, and I would just say like, it's all about progress and not perfection. So, all right, and I'm gonna go ahead and work my way into my T-bands a little bit. And just doing something not too specific. But the T-bands like to feel included when you're doing this lower body work. And I'm finally gonna go ahead and didn't really work on this medius very much, so just making sure that I spend a little time here. And I'm going to go ahead and go in with my elbow. So right now I'm just getting a little bit more familiar, and I'm really just going to start to sink my elbow in gradually. And I'm really just my elbow is an extension of my core and my whole body. So a lot of my clients in the past have said, like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe how strong you are. And you know, that's definitely true, but that's also how you're using your body and using proper body mechanics when you work. And so really starting to sink my elbow in. So Tyler's muscles responding really well, and kind of it's a green light to go a little deeper if feels necessary. And I would never do this compression work directly on the glute because it doesn't stick, like the elbow doesn't stick as well. So usually I would be working on someone under a sheet, but right now I'm working over shorts, which is just as good. And you might start to feel like, just depending on the body, you might start to make contact with the sacrum a little bit. So if it feels bony, you do need to be a little bit careful when you're starting to work your way up into this medius muscle. Just and again, it's really nice to offer a little bit of distraction when you're working. And plus, I just think this feels really nice, that gentle rocking. It's like getting deep tissue work done and feeling like it's soothing too. Not a bad combination. And it's really not a lot more work for me. I find that when it's a static hold in that medius and it's like longer than 5 or 10 seconds, it just starts to feel like it's not effective anymore. So I'm gonna go ahead and also in these transitions, like, it's a chance for me to like catch my breath and kind of refocus. Deep tissue is like, it does require a good bit of energy. I'm taking these little breaks. All right, so I'm gonna go in with my soft fist to begin. And so I really knew at the beginning when I started on this side that active release was gonna help Tyler out a lot. Because that kind of bouncy feeling. And sometimes just doing little micro internal and external movements is better than doing big ones. It's just kind of fun to explore what feels appropriate for. Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and go in with my elbow now. So Tyler shouldn't be too afraid. He knows what's coming. And you still gotta really check in and see how responsive the muscles are. If they're like fighting back, you might need to just use a little less pressure. And don't expect, each side to feel the same. And starting to work my way into the piriformis. It's not the easiest muscle to work on, but because it's an internal and external rotator, it can cause issues in the low back because it's used so much. And just being patient, and I might just use my forearm to kind of just soothe these muscles a little bit. And just taking a little mini break, and I'm going to do this just one more time. I'm going to go ahead and spend a little bit more time. And if this doesn't feel comfortable, I'm doing the same thing with my soft fist, but you can't go quite as deep. So if you're wanting to do piriformis work, I highly recommend using the elbow when you're doing active release. And sometimes the key is just letting good enough be good enough. So like, you might not get a full release, but you'll definitely make a lot of progress. And I like to kind of end with something just a little more mindless, I guess. So I'm just kind of soothing, calming all this down, making nice, as a lot of therapists say. And before I forget, I just want to thank a few of our fantastic patrons. I'd like to thank Macy Williamson, Steve, and Shannon Cross. Thank you guys so much for your support. I really appreciate you. And I'm just going to end with this quad stretch. So adding a little more height and letting Tyler just kind of sink into that stretch. So spending a good 30 seconds. And honestly, like, if I'm holding my breath, I'm kind of telling Tyler without telling him to hold his breath. So as the body worker, just try and keep your breath fluid. And as you work, I don't find it's always necessary to like verbally tell your client to breathe. Just another few seconds. And I think that we'll go ahead and end with just a really nice stretch for the QL. The arms are in a great position for stretching that deep abdominal muscle in the low back. So I'm gonna go ahead and the key here, because Tyler is a, muscular kind of guy, he's more weight to pull. So I'm just kind of supporting myself with my legs. And first I'm just kind of letting Tyler know what's coming and making sure his leg is relaxed. And then can kind of go into the stretch. And there's no way that I could really do this if I wasn't supporting myself on the table. And this is one thing that, you just need to have really a mindful way of doing it without hurting yourself. And that is it for today. Thank you for joining us today, guys. I hope that you enjoyed today's video, and we look forward to seeing you next time.